Paint Along with Skye. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Skye and I post beginning level acrylic painting tutorials here on YouTube every Saturday. So make sure to hit subscribe so you can join the fun and paint along. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. All right, this week we are on a mental retreat at the lake. We're gonna do a really fun, limited color scheme silhouette painting today. It should be really simple. We're gonna be using our 4 standard brushes for today's class, as we do in most classes. I use a kit that comes with 4 sizes that I like to use. This first is a 3/4 inch wash brush, and then I have 3 pointed sized brushes, a size 10, a size 3, and a size 3/0. Your brushes don't need to be exactly the same, but they should be the same general size and shapes as mine. Put in my water cup off the side of the screen the colors that we're going to need for today's tutorial. I'm going to be using an ultramarine blue, some white, some cadmium yellow, and some cadmium orange for the background step. To see a full materials list of everything that you need to paint along, go to skyepratt.com/materials. There's a link in the description box below. It will show you everything that I use and recommend. All right, let's go ahead and jump on in with our background step. We're gonna use our large brush for this. And a little bit of water on the brush. Blend it into your paint here on the palette paper, and then we're gonna take our loaded up brush to the top part of our canvas and bring the brush stroke all the way across the canvas so you get a nice, smooth, clean stripe of ultramarine, very pretty. We're going to add a pinch of white now and make a light blue. And I'm not rinsing my brush in between these 2 colors. I'm going to go right underneath my ultramarine stripe with a stripe of light blue. We don't want to go too far down with our blue. We won't have room for our yellow and orange. All right, I am going to rinse my brush now because rather than blending our blue into our yellow, which would create green, we are going to instead blend our blue to white and then white into yellow. So we'll have a spacer here, a little bit of white. We usually don't see green sunsets in nature, so we're gonna bypass the color mixing there. Speaking of color combinations and of mixing colors, I have a course available on Skillshare called Color 3 101. You can check it out and get a free month of Skillshare with the link I shared in the description box below. I'm gonna take my yellow first and bring that right underneath where I'm going to have my stripe of white. And then I'm gonna bring my white in between. Should be almost halfway, about just taking some white paint into that stripe to help me blend. I wanna blend a little bit, soften that blue. So we've gone from a saturated blue to a light blue to white. Don't be shy, get up in that other color and blend, blend, blend. Really gotta make sure I'm not bringing blue down into my yellow. See a little bit in there. Just don't want, but we do want our yellow to blend into our white as well. Maybe a little too much yellow. That looks pretty good. We don't want a huge white stripe. We're just using this little white trick to help us not create green sunsets. It's kind of a play. That's one of the trickier parts of painting. is getting a good blend. So practice, practice. Great, okay, and then I'm gonna be about halfway. And I'm going to mix up a gorgeous yellow orange. I think I'll bring a sneaky little bit of white in there too. Beautiful for our sunset color, and I'm going to just bring a nice stripe right across my canvas horizontally. We want to go just about halfway. If it's a little more, that's okay. If it's a little less, that's okay too. Your composition doesn't have to be exactly halves. Great, and then we're going to blend our yellow and orange as well. They are next to each other on the color wheel. They're not gonna blend to anything crazy. We're just gonna get a nice yellow orange. Softening our sunset line. Very nice. Okay, and then that's our horizon line, but we're gonna go a little bit further down with it, because what we've done in the sky, we're going to do now in the water as a reflection. So I'm going to thicken that orange stripe, but I'm still gonna be kind of mentally thinking about my horizon line and where that's gonna go. We're gonna repeat those same steps for a nice, beautiful blend. We wanna make sure we have room for blue because it is water, so I think that will look nice, a little more water-like. But we're just repeating those same steps again. So taking our orange into our light yellow, I like to add a bit of white to these warm colors, especially things like yellow and orange that don't have a whole lot of pigment, not very good coverage power. I find that a little bit of white really helps with the coverage. But I also want it to be pretty bright because we're doing sunset colors. Imagining that we're at the lake. Okay, rinsing, taking in some white. Might have gone a little bit far down for my yellow, so I don't want to go any further down. That's okay, should be fine. A little bit of light blue. Rinsed my brush in between those colors. And I'm going to try to match my top colors. All the way down back to my saturated ultramarine blue. A little bit of a blend into my light blue. Really good blending practice today. Very important skill, as I mentioned. I don't want to over blend it. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that good. We're gonna add a little bit more interest here into our water. So if this gradation is a little stripy, that's okay. We're gonna lean into that later. Let's go ahead and step away for a bit and let this first background layer dry, and then we'll work on our second layer and create our beautiful lakeside scene. All right, I'll see everyone in a couple minutes. Okay, welcome back, artists. We have a dry background and the same colors on my new fresh piece of palette paper plus black. So just to reiterate, it was some ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, and cadmium orange. I rinsed my brushes and got some fresh water at break. We're gonna jump right back on into things with a horizon line again for this mid layer. I'm going to use, I think, my medium-sized brush for this. If you wanted to use a slightly smaller brush, that would be acceptable as well. I'm going to mix up a sort of medium blue. So still pigmented, but like a light blue. And I'm going to come right into the middle of my orange. And I'm going to try to do as straight of a line as I can across my canvas. You could certainly use a ruler if you would like a actually straight line. But I like to wing things. And that looks pretty good. We had already a lot of back and forth brush strokes, so not too tricky. All right, and then I'm going to come up on one side here with a little bit of a mountain range with that same saturated blue. And I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap and make sure you can still see a little bit of your pretty orange. And then I'll go ahead and fill those mountain shapes in with my medium saturated blue. Nice solid coverage. A little bit of water, but not so much to where you're totally see-through. All right, nice. A little bit of peekaboo orange. Still not the whole horizon. Could be a good idea to sketch it out with your slightly smaller brush and then fill in with this brush or whatever you like. There's no hard rules in art. Just guidelines. Okay, and I'm going to do one more mountain shape in a significantly lighter blue, and I still want to have a little bit of peekaboo orange somewhere. But this is going to be a mountain further even in the distance. And let me go ahead and use my smaller brush. So second to smallest brush. And I'm going to go along the horizon line a little bit with this back mountain too. And I'm going to make it a little bit steeper. Okay, so like it's really far in the distance mountain. Okay, good. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of a lighter blue just by grabbing some white with that same brush. And add a little bit of interest back there, sort of the direction of the mountain. Don't need too much there, it's a subtle step. And then let me tidy up my horizon line a little bit so that I know what is in front of what. So this should actually come down like so. A little bit of a drip. And we gotta understand which mountain is in front of which. Our lighter color mountain is going to be further in the distance. But it's a lake, so you can see the mountains on the other side. And again, I just want a nice, solid, no see-through blue. Look at how pretty that is already. All right, and then just like we had our reflection of these colors down in our water, we're also going to have the reflection of our mountain shapes. So I'm going to stick with this same second to smallest brush. And right underneath my mountain, I'm going to very delicately add horizontal brush strokes right underneath our mountain, creating a mirror image in horizontal brush strokes. Okay, so it's not the exact image because we have moving water here. So from our vantage point, it looks like horizontal lines of color. A little bit of see-through still. Really don't want to take away all of our orange because that's such a pretty color for this composition that has a lot of blue. Great. Okay, and then of course some right underneath our lighter colored mountain as well, creating all of those same mirror image reflections into our water. Leaving a little bit of peekaboo orange. Great. Okay, and then in our water, let's do some added stripiness before we do our final silhouette layer. I'm going to grab this medium-sized brush again for this next step. And I'm going to come in with some light yellow first. And we should be able to layer some delicate stripes right in that yellow, white, very light blue area. And again, sort of lean into the movement of the water more and more of that horizontal stripiness effect. Let me grab a little bit of orange too. I want to take some yellow orange right into our pretty orange section. Add some stripiness, very, very, very light brush strokes. Not a lot of pressure, barely touching the canvas. And it's a kind of movement where you're pressing down and then pulling up. So you start really light and then you press down and you pull up. We're not going for like a big, chunky, horizontal block. Easier said than done. That was tricky, it's practice. Nice opportunity to add a bit more orange for our pretty sunset colors. All right, and then I'm going to take some blue into my bottom layer. I think I'm going to bring like a in-between blue color, which should help me lean into that stripiness, create a little bit more of a visual blend down in this layer. As you can see, very subtle and not a ton of brush strokes. Let's take a little bit lighter, go a little further down so we get almost waves. And by the time I've reached the bottom, my brush strokes are a little longer than up top. Important element there. And some nice kind of very light blue looks nice there. Bit of a reflection of our remaining last light in our sunset here. Okay, looking pretty. Final step, although real quick before we jump into our silhouette, I think I'm going to add a second layer onto these blue mountains first. My paint is drying so fast today because it is 87 degrees outside and I have to turn my air conditioner off to film. So I think it's about 80 in here, but 87 is honestly doing pretty good this time of year in the US, so I won't complain too much. All right, nice and solid, that looks better. Don't want the see-through. And blue and orange are opposite each other on the color wheel, which is why they look nice together, but you also get sort of weird brown tones, which are sometimes helpful, but for a lot of times with my paintings, you will probably notice I like to use really clean, bright colors. So for today, we're not going necessarily for brown neutral color. That looks much nicer. I think I'm gonna leave my back mountain alone though. Can't decide. Maybe a little more light blue back here. I want to keep that nice 3D look I've got with the wet on wet blending of when I added the slightly lighter blue. And I'm using my smaller brush again. I just don't want see-through. All right. Final part of our painting, home stretch here. Give yourselves a pat on the back if you've made it this far. All right, I'm going to use my second to smallest brush for this detail step. I probably won't use my tiny brush today. I like to keep that guy on hand just in case. It comes in a kit, but sometimes I feel more comfortable with this one. You can use whatever you feel more comfortable with. The very tiny brush I find sometimes brings drips, and then it's got shorter bristles too, so you don't get as smooth of lines sometimes, but it is handy for teeny tiny details where this one is just too big. So I'm gonna start with my kind of horizon for this layer, which I'm going to do that in my light yellow area. And I'm going to try to bring a straight line across into my water. Okay, and then a little bit further out to come to a little bit more of a point. And then I'm going to create like a little hillside where I can put my trees. Wanted sort of inky-like consistency with the black paint, so a little bit of water blended into the paint. Filling in my little mountain shape, mini mountain. Great. Then I'm gonna go right along that same horizon line, bring it over here. And I'm gonna create a slightly smaller one just to keep things interesting. And it's a little bit off center too, so we're sort of centered around my big mountain in the background. Let's go a little further out. But my imagination was like maybe we're standing on a dock or a paddleboard or a kayak on this gorgeous lake. And we can kind of see our little cove and then out to the lake beyond. All right, and then on this side, I'm going to add some big happy trees. Just gonna start with a straight line. And then from the top, I'm gonna have little tiny flicks of the wrist and work my way down, creating that classic pine tree shape. And I wanna go a little further out as I work my way down that first line. And you're gonna go all the way to the bottom. You're not gonna necessarily leave a stump. These guys go pretty close all the way to the ground with their gorgeous needles. Some areas a little bit more solid, and then sort of trailing off as you flick your wrist. And you want solid center part of your tree. Once you've built it. And you want a sort of triangular shape where it's a little bit wider on the base. Okay, and then I think that tree needs a friend. He's gonna be a little bit of a junior pine. Little flicks of the wrist. You wanna have it come a little bit to a nice point at the top. Pretty thin. And then of course our little tree will be a little bit smaller. Very quick and simple, easy way to add some pine trees, set the scene. I had Tahoe on the brain with this painting. All right, pretty cute. And then why not one more cute tree over on this side too. It can be pretty much as tall or short as you like. Kind of going for an in-between those two height over here just to mix it up. If you are painting along today, I would love to see your work. And I've created a Facebook group called the Art Club, designed for that very purpose. So if you'd like to join me and the other students that are taking the classes and post your art, we would love to have you. It's free to join. And there's a link below in the description box. And I also put a lot of these good links in the comments below too. Okay, that looks pretty good. I like to sometimes add a bit of gray. So just some white to a nice medium gray color, like a pencil color. And if you'd like, you can add a little bit of interest here in your tree. And then also back along the little mini mountain bank here of the lake. And I like to usually add a few brush strokes of highlights like that, and then I'll come back with my black and slim things out if needed. It's easy to go a little heavy-handed with those kind of steps. And little tiny differences in darkness can really make a big difference with little details like this. Nice. Okay. Very subtle. Just a few of those highlights. Then I'm going to grab some more black. And I'm going to come right underneath those trees. And I'm going to do the same sort of back and forth reflection, horizontal brush strokes. And I'm going to first shadow our little bank, mini mountain. Just like our big mountains in the background, similar shape and similar reflection in the water. And then we're going to go right underneath our trees. I'm going to do a few brush strokes and then a sort of wiggle into a little triangle. And that really Adds a nice painterly feel. So you see how it's like a reversed triangle with a little bit of a scribbly brush stroke at the bottom. So a few stripes and then a squiggle. Few stripes and a squiggle. All right. Very cute. I think for a final little piece de la resistance, I'm going to grab a little bit of white with the back of my brush and add a couple stars just for fun. Add a little bit of that evening feel. Should get a really effortless circle with the back of your brush. Not too many, just like the beginnings of night for our sunset scene. I also want to mention that I do have an email newsletter. I always forget to mention this, but you can also sign up for that on my website, skyepratt.com, which is just my name, SKYEPRATT.com. And I have a new feature where when you sign up for the email newsletter, you'll also get my free PDF download of the Artist's Glossary, which has a bunch of great artist terms that I use in these classes, and that will also help you along your artist's journey. I am also now offering live sessions and screen-to-screen classes. All the information that I've mentioned during today's class is, again, linked in that description box for you guys, as well as in the comments section and on my website. Okay, I think that it looks really pretty, and it definitely makes me want to go spend a couple days at the lake. I'd love to know what you thought of today's painting in the comments section below. Please hit a like if you liked this painting. And that is all the instruction that I have for us this week. So thank you so much for being here and painting along. And until next time, happy painting and stay creative.